Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
大家好，朋友们好。
你好。
Spencer asked me to speak a little Chinese. I promised him I will do that. 我老婆是东北人，我老婆是沈阳的。她知道控制我吧 ？She control me, man. She's typical 东北 lady, man. This is the story. Sharing some really interesting information, and I want you to know that I think it's important for you as for example, if you're reading an author, right, you should have some sense of being informed about that author's background. You don't just read the author's book. You should kind of get an understanding of, what was that author's experiences which actually led them to writing a particular piece, And in my case also, the older I get, I'm less of a businessman and more of a philosopher, and I really feel that way, and I like performing, and performing isn't the same as being a businessman, is it, right? And so those ideas in mind, oh, and by the way, 20 points in 20 minutes today is 20 points in 40 minutes, all right, so that's all right. But I want you to know what I've done, because I don't like the idea to stand in front of an audience and say I too many times, but it's to inform you, and along the way give you an understanding about China, because unlike most of you, I've been here for 20 years. 我不相信. I don't even believe that I've been here for 20 years. It's really quite incredible. I'd moved to Newport Beach in 1996 from Arizona, originally typical Italiano-Americano, right? Typical Italian-American, born and raised in New York, and my family went to Phoenix, Arizona, and then I ended up in Newport Beach in 96 to 99, and of course that's when I met lots more Asian people. Okay, Chinese. My dear friend in Los Angeles was from Chongqing, and he invited me to China. Now, you have to understand, this is not 2019, this is 1999, right? So when you get invited to Chongqing and Chengdu in 1999, when you get off the plane, you sort of like get I was Cindy Crawford. Do you know what I mean? You're like, there's a foreigner in our city. It's like that. This was 1999. And so I then, as you'll see in a moment, I got invited to speak at the WTO Chengdu Western Forum Conference. I was invited to speak at a roundtable there. And the thing is to understand that when I arrived in Chongqing and Chengdu, I said 1999. Nothing had changed yet. Nothing. It hadn't be it. The big it. We know what I'm talking about, right? The explosion of China, the birth of modern day China officially began in 2000. Now, I'm not referring to Deng Xiaoping, the previous years of the 80s and 90s, which were strictly the establishment of China as a manufacturing powerhouse, okay? That was in manufacturing, so that was all about the SOEs and the government and the high level of corporations, but not at what we call now what we call the consumer level. In America, the consumer economy is it's a given, right? Well, my wife from Dongbei, from the north, if I was to tell all of you from America, when my wife growing up, she didn't ever say to her mom, hey mom, we're gonna go to the mall and play. Folks, there was no mall. There was no shopping. There was nothing. She grew up playing with sticks. No, there was no toys, and this was just 20 years ago. This is not a long 20, 30 years ago. So there's an entirely different upside down aspect to this whole story, which is, again, wonderful. I love sharing these ideas with you. So, what do we have here, right? I mean, this is just your rickety street stools. And I'm eating 3 RMB noodles and drinking 50-cent bottles of beer out on the street, and it's wonderful. But at the same time, I'm a jazz concert pianist. Any jazz lovers? I love jazz piano. Gosh, I love it. And I am invited to, this is at the Hangzhou Grand Theater, which is quite famous. I was invited to play there twice. So I've also sat in the piano stool of a $250,000 Steinway on the stage of China's 大剧院。我是爵士钢琴的演出的，做演出的在好多大剧院我去过，我弹过了。 maybe at least 10 or 12 of China's Grand Theaters, I've sat in, I do a lot of work as an actor in China's TV series. I started acting when I was in Hollywood. And so you sit on these little, I have my own portable folding chair. When you get hired in China, you bring your own chair, you bring your own backpack, you bring your own everything, or you sit on the floor. And that's even if you have a good role. I had good roles. I had shooting for 25 days. You know, I'm like, my mother sees me on TV. You know, it's like, whoa, you know, it's wonderful, right? So I would go for 20 days, 3 weeks, a month, and shoot on set. Freezing cold, no heat, boiling hot, no air conditioning. You know, I mean, just a different world. So when I say that I was sitting on a portable folding chair, you understand the reference, right? Okay, I'm on set on a portable folding chair 16 hours a day, but I'm shooting with these guys, are the superstars. And this is Zheng Jiwei. I shot with him in 2003. I shot with Swin Wei-min. He played Zhou Enlai. He's China's most famous Zhou Enlai actor. He plays Zhou Enlai. He looks just like him. And he played him 15 years ago, and I played in a movie with him 15 years ago. 2 months ago, I get a call and said, come play in another diplomat Chinese movie in Yantai. And I get there, and he's there again. He looked at me, I looked at him, I went, we did this together 15 years ago. Can you imagine? So, you know, I had a lot of these crazy experiences. But then the experiences are also more down to earth. You know, I'm a family man. It's very important for you to understand that as an expat here in China, if you came here as the managing director or president of pick your favorite multinational company, your life is that life. Okay, I came here as an entrepreneur. There's an entirely different experience, right? So I came here and I'm living in China, the real China. And so part of that is I have my Chinese wife and we have our Chinese boy now. Our boy is so beautiful. And he's 7 years old, woman, and 他去那个本地的小学，就是公共的小学. So he goes to local public school. I know lots of foreigners with Chinese wives who send their kids to local public school. First of all, it's free. Second of all, it's really, really good. It's extraordinarily good, and I don't know if you know that. Someone tell me, what was the number one in the international education community? What was the number one rated school system in the entire global world? Anyone know? Shanghai. Hello. And the rest of the school systems in China are just behind Shanghai. They're all really, really good. I'm blown away by how professional and caring the teachers are at my son's primary school. And they were the same way when he was in kindergarten. So I want him in that school. Even if it costs more money, I'd still want him in that school, and it happens to be a block away. I've also deal with the Chinese healthcare system. My health insurance in China is the fact that I live in China and use the Chinese healthcare system. Okay, and I'll explain more to you about that why. But not just for myself. I've been at the bedsides of my mother-in-law for her surgery. For a couple of surgery, I had a hernia I needed to get repaired. And also, I forgot to put it on the slide, for my wife's birth of our child at the Chinese hospital. Because I don't know what it is, where foreigners go, oh, you used a Chinese hospital? I'm like, why wouldn't you? You know, I mean, in China, you go to Di Fuying in Pudong. It's the maternity hospital, right? This is without insurance. Okay, from the prenatal care of my wife, from the moment she was pregnant, all the way through the regular visits for the months, including the ultrasounds, all the way through the birth, okay, where they let me go into the birth room with my wife. You know, she was due, she didn't go into labor. They said, okay, come on into the hospital. Brought her into the hospital, said, okay, 1 o'clock, we're gonna break your water. Great, we broke her water. An hour later, she went into labor. In her case, it was a fast, easy labor. She gave birth in 5 hours, but I was with her the whole time. I was with her the whole time. They said, okay, we're wheeling you down to the birth, down to the birth room. You're ready. Okay, great. You, come on, let's go. Lao Gong, you too. Right? And then they put me in all the medical, and they wheeled me down there, and the 3 Chinese nurses are watching my wife give birth, going, Jiao, Jiao. It's hysterical. Right? This is China. But so you say to me, well, why would you use a Chinese hospital to give birth? Do you realize that they do thousands of births every month? do you think maybe they know what they're doing? That was my thinking. It's like they do this thousands of times every month. I think they know what they're doing, right? And they surely do. And that whole birth experience for us ran, ours was a little bit more expensive for an extra few things that we did, and it was $3,000 US. The whole thing, from beginning to end, right through the birth. You know, so incredibly reasonable. We'll talk more about the healthcare system later. Also church, you know, I've sat in the, I'm sorry the red's not that clear, right here. I've sat in the pews of countless churches on Sunday. Now, I don't know why you keep getting these headlines in the West that China is bashing Christianity. Not the last time I checked. I mean, you want to go to church this Sunday? Well, what's today? Thursday? The day after tomorrow, you want to go to church? Go! There's no problem. What? Did he just say that? Is he serious? Yes, I'm serious. When we had our son baptized in America, but before we did, we were here in Shanghai, and we went to St. Peter, out in Jinqiao, Sacred Heart Catholic Church. I met with Father Li. He speaks Chinese. He does the foreign mass. We met with Father Li, and he said, "Where are you going to have the baptism? Here?" I said, "No, we're going to go do it back east." He said, "Oh, okay, great." You know, so we could arrange the baptism here, and if you want to go to confession before mass, this is Catholic Church. You know, no problem. Is anybody back there telling you this? No, this is not what you're being told. So, you know, I've sat in countless pews of churches in China, and Chinese people can do that too. Okay. I spent 2 years at the Kerry Hotel Pudong, so why do I tell you that? Because I've done the 5-star corporate thing as well. Again, so you understand, I've done that as well. My clients are GM, Dow Chemical, CBRE, the big real estate company. So I've done all that stuff. And I'm sorry, but in red, it says, I interviewed the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders here in Shanghai at Mint Club. The Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders are sponsored by, anybody? No, American Airlines. So American Airlines was promoting their new routes between America and China, and they, for the first time, flew the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders in as a big part of the big promotion for the whole week. And they had an event, and they hired me to be the host of that particular event, and I interviewed the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders in front of everybody, which was really interesting, you know. So I've done a lot of different things, and that's the point. Now, I've been a member of the American Chamber for many, many years. Did you know that all companies in China and all organizations in China, all companies are required to support a charity as part of their business? It's not an option. It's not a choice. It's not maybe. It's you have to. And the government, when you register your company in wherever you are, like whatever province you are, for example, the hotels in Hainan Island, every hotel has to sponsor and support a local charity, which is usually the kids that are out in the rural areas that are sick or have no money, need surgeries, even may just need money for education, you know. And the government tells you which charity you're supporting as part of your business. Wow, no kidding. I mean, this sounds pretty good to me, you know. So for American Chamber a couple years ago, I stood up on the stage in the ballroom at the Peninsula Hotel, and I auctioned off a $75,000 Cadillac. You know, when we got I think I only got 50 for it, you know, but I did pretty good, right? It took me about 15 minutes, and the final bid was, I think, $250,000 RMB. I've also sat in the Chinese courtroom. Ooh. And I will sit in the Chinese courtroom again because there's someone that I'm mad at. Yeah, someone owes me, and I'm going to go back to Chinese court. And in fact, tomorrow when I go to Chengdu, my best friend is a very, very, very good lawyer here in China. And so again, can you go to court, and is it like normal? Yes. Yes, you go to court, your lawyer presents the evidence in the case, the other side presents their evidence in the case. The judge asks you, can't you people please settle this? The judge encourages, the judge is like, can't you all just go outside and get this settled on your own? And one party says no, and then the judge rules, and he decides. That's kind of normal, isn't it? That's what courtroom is. So that's what happens in a Chinese courtroom. 20 years ago, was in the front page headline of the Chengdu newspaper. It was bizarre. I was in the front page of the Chengdu newspaper. This would be like being on the front page of the LA Times, I suppose. With the highest ranking Chinese government official to ever be convicted and thrown in jail. Back then, he was the head of the Sichuan provincial party. His name is Zhou Yangkang. He went on to become PSB and go to Beijing, and he's the highest ranking official to ever get convicted for corruption and get thrown in jail. And so I was literally no one in 2000 when this happened. So my friends called me up, you're on the front headline you're in the newspaper on the front page with this guy. I'm like, oh my gosh, right? So that was really quite unbelievable. But then, I'm really proud of it. This one I'm proud of, because this just happened last month. I got published in China Daily, and that's the nation's newspaper. So I really was honored by that. And my focus in the story, they asked me to submit my profile, the story. And I let them know that I came to an understanding that, you know what, Italian culture and Chinese culture are much more 同质的 than American culture and Chinese culture, which are more like oil and vinegar, you know? And that's because there's a very, very, very high, very strong focus on family, you know? And I was really, really happy to have that experience just a couple weeks ago, in fact. I have a Chinese driver's license. I've bought and sold cars here in China. It's a really interesting experience. I worked 2 years ago. I had a contract with Geely Automotive. So during the networking, if you have more questions for me about the Chinese automobile industry, I'd be happy to answer those. And I've driven across China twice. Okay? Once from the far south all the way up, and then another time from the east all the way further up. First time was about, I think, 2,500 miles, and the second time like 1,600 miles. No better way in the world to see America than to get in a car and do a road trip, right? Right? And actually, America's really just amazing for that. China wasn't, I'm not going to say it was as good, but still, to see a country, the real way to see a country, get in the car and go across. It's really, really fantastic. Really, really fantastic. Okay, so I've written 2 books on China, and The Dragon Roars On is the second book, and just published it a few months ago. All right, let's get into China. Around 2014, the United Nations and Goldman Sachs said China's middle class is going to quadruple by 2020. Well, we're really close, and it is, and it did, and it's happening. There's no mistake about it. At the same time, McKinsey said China's wealthy and upper middle class combined will be twice the size of its US counterparts. China's mainstream households with incomes of 16 to 34,000 will rise from just 6% of the population in 2010 to 51% of the population in 2020. Yep. And those numbers are very low, as you'll find out why in a moment. Okay, those numbers are low. Chinese make a lot more money than what's officially reported. Gold around 2014-15 again. You understand everyone was talking about how China was about to collapse again. It's just this old ridiculous story. It's not going to happen. And back then it was happening, so I was quoting also Jim O'Neill, Goldman Sachs former chairman. And what did he say about it? He said, it's ridiculous. China is slowing, but a lot of times it's because in Beijing, the policies they do intentionally slow things down. Okay? And they have a lot more flexibility in being able to make a decision one day and implement it the next day, whereas in America, the stuff gets stuck in the government and nothing gets done. Okay? So the gridlock over there is a bit of a problem. Here there's other problems, but gridlock isn't one of them. So what he said back then was, these are things, it's going to take time for China to get readjusted. What does he mean by that? The readjustment was business away from reliance on imports, getting away from reliance on the exports, and also away from all the business being in with the SOEs, the state-owned enterprises, and infrastructure investment, and getting more of a rebalancing to what? the Chinese consumer economy, the domestic consumer economy, to get it more like the American economy. Has that happened successfully? It absolutely has. Been very, very successful. Well, soon has arrived. It's slowed down. And we're not going to talk at all about blaming politicians, because if we have that conversation, it'll last for like 3 months, right? Okay, there's a lot we can say about on that side, so we won't even go there. Standard, good old-fashioned reality about the economics is the cycles. So you've got 7-year cycles, 15-year cycles, 30-year cycles, 60-year cycles, every day. And the American cycle is matured from post-World War II. You can't change that. It's mature. And then what do you do from there? It's very tough. Okay? But the Chinese cycle is a lot younger. It's faster, but it's also a lot younger. Okay, so these are the realities, and we're going to take a moment here and wait for Alex. But what's really going on is to understand that, yes, China's cycle, economic cycle, is a lot faster for a lot of different reasons, but it's still relatively young. Now, it's hit that 15-year mark, right? So we've got headwinds. The heyday is over. All of you know that. All of you have heard that. The super, super high growth period is over. I'm heartbroken because I didn't buy an apartment in Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, or Beijing, which now has gone up in value by 6 times, wow, or 10 times. Okay, that isn't going to, they're not going to go from here up another 10 times. It's just not going to happen. So the party, that ship has sailed, as we like to say, right? Okay, fine. So what's happening is what I like to call is a soft, long, chaotic landing. But it's soft, it's long, and it's okay. So point number 1, what do we need to keep in mind? Now I'm going to go through 20 points. What do we need to keep in mind? Primarily, you should be watching the state of affairs of domestic consumer households. Pay attention to what's happening with Alibaba, with consumer households. That's the area of the economy that they want to continue stimulating. Consumer retail sales growth remains even now at 8 to 9%. That's the numbers that you're looking for. This is where you want to see where's the strength. And the same thing goes for small businesses. And please keep in mind what we're talking about. We're not talking about 150 million middle-class people like in the United States. Okay? We're talking about 700 million people. This is a very, very strong and large and influential group of people in terms of impact. Regarding the property market, it's extremely important understanding to have here. Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen. Those are the 4 masters, right? They are not China. They're not the Chinese property market. In total, those 4 cities in total, only 14% of the country's entire real estate market. You've got 40 major cities, 250 including all the second-tier cities. Including the 3rd and 4th tier cities, you've got about 250 second, 3rd, and 4th tier cities. That's where 90% of the households own their home. Do you understand? Tsinghua University, 90% of the households in China own their home. Own their home. If your daughter is marrying my son, they have to start their life with a home that they own. That's the requirement. That's like the traditional thing you have to do. Someone's got to buy them a home to live in. They don't rent. Nobody rents. Right? So 90% of families own their home. Now we know that that's changing in the cities where real estate prices are through the roof, because they can't afford to do that anymore in a lot of cases. But that's not China. China is the other 246 cities like Shenyang, where I live, or Chongqing, or Chengdu, or Tianjin, or Wuhan, or Xi'an, and on Changsha, and on and on and on and on and on. Okay? In those cities, okay, homes are 4,000 to 12,000 RMB per square meter, in that range. Okay, just let me give you the translation, right? So about $70 a foot, or $60 a square foot, on up to about $200 a square foot. there you go. I mean, that's what my brother's house in Phoenix, Arizona, on 32nd and Cactus, that's what my brother's house has cost, $200,000 for a 1,700 square foot house. 2 to 3. In fact, the average in Phoenix now is 300, right? But you can buy a good, decent home for 200 or a condo, right? Okay, so again, surprise, right? I don't think you understood this before today, so I'm really happy to share this with you. Crash? Selectively, maybe, but I doubt it. I mean, it's going to pull back. There's headwinds. Okay, it did a few years ago, but primarily, again, everyone keeps. What does the news do? The news reports the exception to the rule and reports it as the rule, and it's not the rule. Okay, so they only report on what's happening in Shanghai and Guangzhou, Shenzhen. All right, so if you own a home that you paid if you own a home that you paid $100 a square foot for, and it's now worth $1,200 a square foot, are you feeling pretty happy? If it goes back down to $800, are you upset? But are you still doing pretty good? Thank you. And what was your original mortgage on your home that you bought when it was $100 a foot? By now, you don't even have a mortgage. You didn't even have a mortgage. So who cares whether your house goes from $1,200 a foot back down to $800 when you originally bought it for $100 and it didn't even have a mortgage? Because they didn't give mortgages. They didn't even do mortgages back then. Do you understand? They didn't have mortgages. Everyone paid cash. My mother-in-law's home is, again, in Shenyang, a regular normal city, and it's call it 850 square foot, classic condo, 2-bedroom, very nice little home, lovely. Nice furniture, wood floor, it's beautiful. She bought it, she's a retired school teacher. She's She's in the school teacher's 校区, right? And she originally paid something like $10,000 for the apartment. Okay, now it's worth literally $120,000. But that's not even that high. That's not even that good. But is that unusual? Did that ever happen in the United States? Yes. Yes. Do you remember the stories? My mother-in-law back in America, back in the 60s, bought her home in Scottsdale, Arizona. It was 2,300 square feet. She paid like $27,000 for it. And now it's worth $375,000. So the same thing happened in America. Remember the story of Steve Jobs and his family in, was it San Jose? That area. His parents owned that home there, and they paid like $30,000 for it. And now it's worth $2.2 million. So this is no big deal. It's normal. These things happen in real estate economies. All right. So there's nothing that unusual happening here. That's my message. My message to you. Now. Typical middle-class households in America have no money. They have no cash, and they have $10,000 in debt, and at the end of the month, it's all gone. Okay? And there's lots of reasons for that over the long term. Here in China, it's exactly the opposite. Okay? 200 million middle-class households have low expenses, including low rent, if they have rent at all, or a mortgage at all, low health care, cost of living to food. China is the eat-out capital of the world. People eat out here all the time. And you get great meals. And they're not expensive. Okay. Transportation, again, I called a DD car, which is like, you guys have Uber in America, right? I called the car, I got a select car. It was like a Lexus. Okay, and it took me here. 20-minute cab ride cost me like $3.50. What would that cost back in America? I think $30. Or $17 or something, right? So transportation, and again, low debt. Chinese households have low or no mortgage debt. About 50% of homes in China now have mortgages. The others don't even have any mortgages at all. Low credit card debt, and it's cash rich. Chinese are cash rich, okay? They've got a lot of money in the bank. The average looking Chinese person, okay, this hit me in 2004 when I went to Bank of China, and there was this, really shabby-looking guy. This is in my first book. There was a shabby-looking guy standing in line. I mean, he really looked shabby-looking guy, shabby, with this old backpack, right? And it was full of cash. It was full of cash. He had like $50,000 in this backpack. Now you say to me, oh yeah, well because In America, right away you're thinking he was a drug dealer or something. Not in China. No. I don't know where he got the money from or what he was doing. And this is what began my journey to write my first book on China. My friend who sells seafood called me and said, hey, I'm in Beijing. I said, yeah, me too. He goes, great, come with me. I'm going to sell my fish to this famous fish distributor guy in Beijing. Come with me, we'll have dinner. I'm like, okay. I get in the car with him. The fish distributor guy sent a Mercedes S500 to pick us up. Okay? We go to meet him, and we go to this the farmer's market for fish. But this, in Beijing, was the farmer's market for fish. This was like 1 square kilometer. You with me? 1 square kilometer. I mean, like a whole block. The entire block was, between the streets, the fish market. You go in with the car, and there's all the fish markets around. Which one is his? It is his. Okay. It's his fish market. The whole thing is his, right? We go into that building to meet him. We go upstairs. He walks in the door. I don't know how to explain. How do we redefine the word plain? Plain. I don't know how to explain. Plain. He was just plain. He was as plain could be. This man was worth millions and millions and millions. He was Mr. Fish King of Beijing. And you meet him and just go, what? Really? You know? So I have to impress upon you how much this is the case in China. People don't show off their wealth. Now the new generation is a different ballgame, okay? But the average person looks average, but they could easily have $50,000 or $100,000 in the bank. Number 5, credit card debt is certainly rising, but 95% of balances are being paid off in full every month. Number 6, again, mortgages in China are only 10, 15, or 20 years. 30-year mortgage is insane. The banks don't even offer them. Okay, you're giving all your interest money to the. I'm preaching to the choir on this one, right? Okay, 30 to 40% down payments. So there's plenty of equity. Yes, there are bad property situations. Yes. I'm not telling you there's not, but they're very isolated. Okay. So when you see in the news about the protest of the real estate back in America, it's an isolated problem. Okay. Number 7, again, the United States created this banking and Wall Street nightmare back in 2008-9, right? The Wall Street bankers and politicians made billions and caused a meltdown, and then they bailed out the billionaires, right? So we know that happened, and such extremes don't exist in China, okay? There are some extremes here, the old shadow banking system, but not that extreme. And the government has learned, they're like, whoa, we cannot let that happen. So they're not going to let it happen. So as long as they remain with enough of a focus on maintaining societal and financial stability and harmony for the masses of Chinese consumer households and families, I believe we're going to be all right. The government is not stupid. They do not want societal instability, right? It's different thinking. 200 million homes in China worth on an average $150,000 each with no mortgages. That's $30 trillion of untouched home equity. Can you believe that? And that's what it is. There's the numbers. There's an untapped market of $30 trillion. They don't even do home equity here. It hasn't even begun yet. Isn't that incredible? Now, this of all things I think I posted, being that you're real estate folks, should be making you having your jaw just drop. 30 trillion of home equity untouched. The automotive market has flattened out. Growth has flattened. Again, we've hit headwinds at 2.2 million cars per month. Okay. 50% of cars today in China are purchased with a loan, 50% paid in cash still. That's how much cash Chinese households have. I'm not talking about Mercedes, BMW, I'm talking about regular cars. Okay. Number 11, China's public transportation system. Okay, it's inexpensive. I translated it to Western words. 50 miles in 15 minutes for $5. Okay, you can get on the subway here right now in Shanghai, pop over to the railway station and go to Suzhou. It's a total of about, say, 60 miles, and that will cost you, Chinese people help me, $6, 30 RMB, 35 RMB, $6, $5. And the train that takes you there gets you there in 15 minutes because it goes 300 kilometers an hour. That's China. Incredible. Cheap, efficient healthcare, my favorite subject. I get sick. Go to the hospital. $2 to see the doctor. Doctor says, oh, you need an x-ray. Okay, $10. You need an ultrasound, $30. CT scan, it's more serious. $60. $150 for an MRI. Really? Okay. Fast, cheap, efficient healthcare. And fast, too. It gets done within a couple of hours, the same day. Okay. Number 12. I know, Tiffany. I know. I'm hurrying. China product quality always was good. Always was good. If the China product quality is bad, it's because the company that asked for it spec'd it bad. You have to understand that. Okay, if they asked the plastic to be that thick, it's because the company asked for the plastic to be that thick. Okay, they can easily say, build it nicer. And the Chinese are fully capable. They build iPhones, don't they? Right? And they build amazing things. This is my audiophile project, right? These JBL speakers, this turntable, this amazing amplifier that's an award winner, all made in China. This famous Zoom H4n recorder. I mean, I could name 1,000 super high quality products that are all made in China. Household saturation of cars is now at 40%. Okay? In America, it's 85%, where basically every adult in the house has a car. In America, in China, one household has one car, and right now it's 4 in 10 Chinese households own one car. So the market's still got a long way to go, doesn't it? That's the point. You know, yes, it's slowing down. I get that. I'm not saying it's not, but it's got a long way to go. China no longer is, Chinese people are becoming more proud of their own country, and they finally should be too. The thing about the foreign brand is wearing off. Okay, they don't need or want an Apple phone anymore. They're happy to buy a Huawei or a Xiaomi or a Vivo. Okay, this is a very important point for you to be aware of in terms of marketing. Okay, and the government now, I'm going to skip this one because it's all the same point. The government is now doing a lot to stimulate the market, including and especially the service market, and that's back in 2015. And this is what they're doing now. They just raised the monthly tax exemption for a small company, like our company, my wife's company. Okay, you're an SME in China. You were not paying any tax on the first 30,000 RMB a month, which is about 4,500 US dollars. They just increased that to 100,000. So you're tax exempt on your first 100,000 of revenue, 15,000 US dollars per month. And they've done that to keep the economy strong. Okay, so that's the latest and the greatest on that. 17, I'm almost there. Yeah. Oh gosh, Xi-Trump trade issue. Do you think it's going to be a disaster? The trade thing? I don't. Okay, they're going to make great deals. They're going to make better deals. Okay, the one thing, we won't get into politics, but to be tough on China is a very wise thing that Trump's decided to do. To be tough on China, they were sweeping the floor with the world. Okay, and he could see what was going on, and the deals were really unfair. Okay, they were really unfair for many years. The corporate America sold out the country to China. Okay, so it's good to be tougher on China. It needs to happen. And in the end, I believe that the problem is that the media is reporting everything as a crisis. That's the problem. Okay, and 3 months later, was it a crisis? No. So remember that. And my forecast says that the world is going to split in two. We're going to have a China-led world with the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, and then the US-led world. So China's not going to play nice with America that much. They're going to go their own way, and they are doing that. Okay, they are through the Belt and Road Initiative. They're getting all the Southeast Asian countries and South American countries. So they're going to build up their own world led by China, and that's the other world over here led by the US. It's going to become more parallel. It's going to become parallel. That's my view of how the future is going to look. Huge cash economy. I wish I had more time. But now that cash is flowing onto the books because companies are registering, because now they can register, because they're happy to register, because their first 100,000 RMB a month of revenue is tax-free. So why not register? So now that money is becoming on the books, reported in GDP. You with me on that point? Okay. And 19, statistics are becoming more and more accurate, rules and regulations clarified, updated, and enforced. Overall, this greater clarification, enforcement, and transparency is good for the long-term stability and trust of China's economy. Don't we all want that? Absolutely yes. We have a long way to go, but it's heading in that direction. And again, Trump is pushing now, forcing them to be more fair and be more reasonable, and that's good. And in the long term, it's going to be good for everybody. Final point has to be for all of you on real estate about the ghost towns. Remember the story 5 years ago about the ghost towns, right? And back then I was like, oh, please, right? So CLSA out of Hong Kong followed up on all the ghost towns last year, and they're not ghost towns anymore. Now they're not ghost. Now people are there. Right, which is what I said when they called them ghost towns. It's ridiculous, right? Wait a minute, Mario. There's 65 million empty apartments in China. Isn't that a problem? Well, there are 65 million empty apartments here. That's a lot. But again, it's China, okay? It's not America. It's a different world, okay? The equivalent of that in America would be about 15 million, okay? But there's other variables. There's a lot of different variables. So I'm not going to say that's a good thing. It's definitely not a good thing. It's a short-term drag. It's headwinds. Absolutely, yes. But it's not a big, disastrous problem. China's slowing down after 15 years of crazy, amazing growth. The headwinds are there. It's getting tougher, and it's slowing. But still, it's an incredibly powerful, growing economy and society for the next 20 years. And I'm done. Thanks very much, everybody. Feel free to get in touch with me.